Welcome to this episode of Abide in Me, How Jesus Models Secure Attachment with God. This series is a survey of the Gospel of Mark, looking for how Jesus models what is now called secure attachment, which is the physiological, emotional, cognitive, and spiritual experience of what is often called salvation or regeneration or being conjoined with God or enlightenment, individuation, even becoming spiritual. Through the series, we will discover the benefits of becoming securely attached with God, which is the transformation of one's life into one of joy and satisfaction. We continue in the first chapter, Gospel of Mark, and we come to verse 29. Jesus has left the synagogue, and he comes to Simon and Andrew's home. They discover that Simon's mother-in-law is sick in bed with a high fever, and so she can't serve them. They tell Jesus right away, this is a glitch in the program. So what does he do? He goes to her bedside, takes her by the hand, and helps her sit up. We're told then the fever left her, and she prepared the meal for them, as was expected. The Gospel of Mark is characterized by its immediacy. Within a very few verses of the first chapter, Jesus is engaged in his life's work. He's teaching and healing. And right after that first miracle, the very public exorcism in the synagogue, the group goes together to lunch to the house, and they discover that the lady of the house is too ill to serve them, as was to be expected of her. So we are told Jesus went to her bedside, took her by the hand, helped her up. And I see that as being a model of how a securely attached person behaves in such circumstances. What they do, their first thing they think of and the first actions they take are to be present, to attend to the other person and their needs, and then finding a way to give support. In fact, that is the basic model upon which all healing is based. Now, you and I don't have divine power to heal instantly like Jesus did. We are instead created to become conduits of that same power. It's not that our hands heal, the Lord heals through our hands. Our presence doesn't heal anyone, but our presence brings the divine love that does heal. Our arms do not support each other. It's the Lord's arms carrying us all together. So what we see here is Jesus in his ordinary life, right? He gets hungry. They have to go eat. And they walk to somebody's house, and they expect to be served and fed, as was the custom in those days of welcoming strangers in and being courteous and giving, as was the custom of being hospitable. And yet, at the same time, this gives us a wide view and really a deep understanding of Jesus' life in this small description. And it gives us a deeper understanding of what it is to be securely attached. It happens in normal life. This is what we all experience day to day. It doesn't require extraordinary circumstances to live this way. Jesus didn't float through life, right? He ate, he slept. He had all the bodily functions that we all experience. And note it's not the case that everyone is well, that there's no obstructions in life, that there's no conflicts in life. So we're not being set up for failure here, and we're not being asked to be superhuman or to remove ourselves from ordinary life or to expect life to go well if we become securely attached. Experiencing a secure attachment with God, with ourselves, with others, as I propose Jesus had accomplished, does not give us some special life. It doesn't create special circumstances in our life. And yet it gives us a wide and deep feeling, experience, understanding, and ability to be present, to be attentive to others, and supportive of others. And modern psychology shows that is actually what heals people. That was my experience as a mental health counselor. A person resolved whatever was their issue. They even got better by their own measure. They were healed, not because I told them what to do or I had some special wisdom or led them through some particular exercise, but because whatever I did, I was present with them. I was attentive and caring about them and supportive of them as they were. So we can all go about our normal lives without any extra effort, without any superhuman exertion, and be healers because of the way we are being, not because of the things we are doing. So, of course, in order to go on the way of life, I'm going to be observing my projections of my woundedness, of my fears. I'm going to be observing my arrogance whenever that comes up, and I'm going to get quicker and quicker at stopping and letting go and not making myself higher or better or being right. I'm going to be observing my privilege of when I think I'm better than someone else, that I know better. That I'm going to keep doing that, but it is my practice of presence, attention, and caring that actually creates the circumstances of my healing, of my becoming securely attached to my God, to myself, and to others. And it's miraculous. It's not instantaneous. My theology describes that as the divine in action through Jesus, that this would happen instantaneously. When I'm not trying to be right, when I'm not being the expert or the manager, when I'm not thinking I need to be in charge, when I'm simply present to the current circumstances, I'm curious about what's going on, I put myself in their shoes, I go sit with them, that will open me to the flow that is this healing love. Now, if someone has made bad choices and they've gotten sick emotionally, psychologically, even physically, and I see that, I notice their bad choices, that simply informs me about how I can better care for them rather than using all that as a litany to tell them how bad they are, right? Now, this is a radical and hard thing to do. It's usual that we would step up and tell someone, give them advice, tell them what they're doing wrong, tell them how to do it right. That's the typical thing that goes on in this world. And to stop doing that is really hard because it feels like I'm not doing my job or they're going to continue to hurt themselves or whatever. But this is what Jesus is modeling. This is the practice that he is showing us. So we return to the story here where there's this expectation of this group is coming to this home, and the expectation is the woman in the home would serve them. That is the typical hospitality that would happen during the day. The underlying reality is that women in the home were servants, they were the caregivers, and of course, that's become a familiar trope to us all. We have the male tribal leader, and when something goes awry, like the servant gets sick, the leader gets angry and demands that they serve despite their illness, whatever, or at least dismisses that servant and then replaces her probably with a younger, right, woman. So Jesus doesn't do that. He doesn't buy into or be simply mechanical in response to the normal expectations of the world. And why can he do that? Because he is in the flow of God's love. He is in staying attentive to the present moment. And so he sees someone else's distress and he's able to be with them in that distress rather than being caught up by his own discomfort or interference with what is a normal daily life. So Jesus is there modeling the benefit of being able to stay present and attentive to other people's caring, therefore quickly overcoming any upset that happens to me when circumstances go awry. Now, of course, again, Jesus' way of being attracts attention. We're told later in this section of Mark chapter 1, after sunset, many sick and demon-possessed people were brought to Jesus. The whole town is gathering to watch this amazing thing. This is new to them. It's attracting attention, and Jesus being effective. He heals many people with various diseases, and he casts out demons, we're told. And then a very interesting thing is said. Because the demons knew who he was, he did not allow them to speak. So illness in the story there, possession, are obvious, right? We can see it going on. It impacts one's daily living. In this case, it would ruin people's lives, right? They wouldn't be able to function. They might die of starvation, right? Because they couldn't care for themselves, or they would be living in desperate poverty, dependent on other people's handing them their crumbs and so forth, right? So it was a big deal to be ill or injured. Like you, I'm sure we're reading this and we're wondering, what's that got to do with me? And I would invite you to consider that these illnesses and this possession are symbolic of our spiritual life, of our mental and emotional life, and that they represent those inner dysfunctions that are part of our personality from the way we were raised, from the traumas we've experienced, from the stories that we've started to live and tell ourselves. Or they could represent our dependence upon or attachment to other external sources of satisfaction that we would come to depend on. Even addiction is that way, right? If I begin to believe that other people need to take care of me or that I can't do things myself, and I listen to those voices, then I am going to become ill. So this story, to me, is demonstrating or manifesting what happens when those inner voices are stilled. The voices from all the different parts of us, all the I's. I'm a bad person. I'm a good person. I'm an expert. I'm the failure. I'm not needy. I'm wounded. All of those voices are quieted when we practice, as Jesus is modeling, being present with another, listening authentically, and then actually caring. This is this radical thing that Jesus is modeling, and it continues to be radical today. We keep thinking we need to step up and do something to cure people, that people need to change in order to be able to take care of themselves, that we need to lift ourselves up by our own bootstraps and so forth. When in fact, it is this basic behavior of a community in which we listen to each other, we're present with each other, we care for each other. It is then that, as Jesus predicts again and again and again, that God is abiding in us and so works through us to heal us and the world. I pray this has supported your transformative life, whatever practice you have in your life. I want to thank Solomon Keel for his music, and I want to invite you to make a contribution to this work if you wish and are able through the PayPal link. And I invite you to continue to listen to the next episode. You be well.